Hello, everybody, and welcome into Devils in Detail Live. My name is Killian McClatchey. I'm joined alongside by Alyanna, Harina. It is one of our last shows here in the studio for this year, but don't worry, we're still here right now. We still have a great show planned out for you today, and we still have next week for you as well as we get going on the rest of the year.
We've got a full slate on the show today, from volleyball senior night to the first weekend of basketball season. But first, let's go to Killian and Hunter as they discuss what happened with the Sun Devils at the Rose Bowl this past weekend.
Well, first, we're going to welcome in a regular here to Devils in Detail Live. I believe it's the last time.
It is, unfortunately. I've got to be stepping away. Bigger and better things, I guess. Not really.
I don't know how you can get much better and bigger than this.
No, I mean, yeah, that's true. I don't know either.
Hey, and you know what? You're not going to get any bigger or better than Sun Devil football.
Oh, better? You want to use that word right now after this past weekend?
So, well, we got Hunter Robinson here. So we'll get started here. Hunter, this past weekend, you just mentioned it, the Sun Devils, they couldn't continue their winning ways in Pasadena, Rose Bowl, UCLA. What was the biggest thing you attribute that loss to?
I mean, it's got to be the defense. I mean, they did a good job containing the rush, but that's never an issue when you face UCLA, at least with Rosen under center. But they couldn't contain Josh Rosen. He was making passes literally wherever he wanted to on the field, which he is a very good quarterback. Don't take anything away from him. But other defenses have been able to limit him and have been able to make sure that those check down passes that he likes to do when he's under pressure, that those only go for a gain of, 2-3 yards. They don't go for a gain of 10.
Yeah, certainly kind of reverted back to the early season ASU where that defense, that seems like what they were doing. They'd give up those little short outlet passes and then miss tackles. But so there's 2 games left this season. You got Oregon State and then Territorial Cup against Arizona. How do you think this team finishes? Do they get to a bowl game? Does Todd Graham save his job?
I mean, I would like to think that they get to a bowl game. They face Oregon State, which has been by far the worst team in this conference. It's not out of the realm of possibility if ASU beats Oregon State and a few other things happen, that 11 out of 12 teams in the Pac-12 could qualify for bowl games with the 6 wins needed to reach a bowl game. So I would like to think that they beat Oregon State. If for some reason they go into Corvallis, which is still a relatively hard place to play, that's not incredibly easy. If they do go in and lose and they're facing, the University of Arizona, Khalil Tate,
yes,
who has been unstoppable, really. It's going to be interesting, and it's going to come down to that game, I think, when you're talking about does Todd Graham keep his job. If they lose to Oregon State and they lose to the University of Arizona, I don't know how Todd Graham keeps his job. Honestly, even though they do have that win over the number 5 team in the nation at the time against the University of Washington, I don't know how he keeps his job after 2 straight seasons of getting to 5 wins relatively early in the season and being able to come up with that 6th one to become bowl eligible.
All right, well, you heard it here first, folks. Hunter Robinson says if the team goes 0-2, Todd Graham is out. So thank you very much, Hunter, for one last time. Good luck on everything going forward. We're now going to send it over to Alyanna and Richard Girafo. This guy got a little men's basketball for you.
Thanks, Killian. I'm joined here with basketball reporter Richard Girafo. How's it going, Richard?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
So this Sun Devil basketball team has the ability to play both a small lineup and a big lineup. But let's start with the lineup that they've had the most experience with. What makes Sun Devil basketball so dangerous with their small lineup?
Well, the small lineups that we saw against Idaho State the other day were very effective. They started off the game with a traditional big lineup with Daquan Lake and at the center position, but he struggled in the beginning. So within the first few minutes, we saw Remy Martin come off the bench, and they went super small. And I got to say, it was impressive how they were able to turn it around, how he came in and was a spark for this tiny lineup. And I was kind of concerned about it when they first came in. I was like, they're going to get beat on the inside. They're not going to get some rebounds. But what I saw was a fast defense. They were flying around the perimeter. It took them some time to get going on offense. What separated them from the Bengals was a run late in the first half in the last 4 minutes of the game that Coach Bobby Hurley was very impressed with. But as far as the small lineup goes, I think that it was very effective. Shannon Evans and Trey Holder were bringing the ball up. They were handling. Trey was doing a lot of things. He almost finished with a triple-double. It was impressive, and I think once Kamani Lawrence comes back, and he's now out 4 to 6 weeks, we're going to hit on that in a little bit, but when he comes back, they're going to be able to slot him in at the power forward position, and they're going to be able to put Romello or Daquan Lake, and they'll have a smaller lineup, but still have some of that size and versatility. So I think the small lineup, I think it's going to do ASU very well this year.
They've definitely got a lot of experience on that small lineup, like you mentioned with Trey Holder and Shannon Evans. But let's look on the other end with this bigger lineup. You mentioned Kamani Lawrence being out on an injury. Who are you looking to see step up in that position?
Well, in that absence, we're really going to have to see a lot from Vitaly Scheibel. I know it sounds a little crazy, and Coach Bobby Hurley was saying he's more of a position player than anything, but we're going to have to see some serious production from him because as far as Romello White goes, we don't know when he's going to play. He's a game-by-game basis right now, and when he gets in the court, he's going to be big for them. But we're going to have to see production from Vitaly Scheibel. We're going to have to see production from Cody Justice. He's going to have to hit the three and play some nice low post defense and be able to switch and adapt to the new type of basketball. And then we're also going to have to see continued production from Daquan Lake. He had an excellent debut game the other day. It was really a joy to watch. He was manhandling men on the inside. He had an emphatic poster jam. It was really cool. But the main production we're going to have to see is from Vitaly Scheibel and Cody Justice. They're going to be the main parts until Kamani Lawrence comes back to filling out this bigger lineup.
Well, I can tell you right now, I was not expecting you to say Cody Justice in there.
Yeah.
But going off of, still on the subject of this bigger lineup, what are we going to see from the Sun Devils when Lawrence does come back?
Well, when Lawrence comes back, we're going to see a totally different team because this guy is a legit top 100 athlete. Along with Remy Martin, these guys are really going to round out this lineup nicely. And when Romello White does come back for good, you'll be able to throw out a massive lineup. You could get Remy Martin or Shannon Evans alongside Trey Holder, Kamani Lawrence, Daquan Lake, and Romello White. And that, personally, I think that could be really interesting because I think that could flip the concept of what we know as college basketball on its head because people are getting smaller, they're shooting more threes. But if ASU can manhandle teams and force them to put their big guys in, I think that's going to give them a unique advantage over teams that people didn't think they would have. With Romello and Daquan, that's a lot of size on the inside. So once we get all the players back, once they can throw out a super small depth lineup and then a really big lineup with Kamani at the 3 and Daquan and Romello at the 5, it's going to be really interesting to see if it works. Now, like I just said, we're going to have to see if this works. That's purely hypothetical for now, and we're not going to get to see it till around Christmas time as Kamani's out. So have some patience with the Sun Devils, but I think these two lineups are going to offer really, really unique play from this team this season.
Right, and with the way they finished last season in 8th, having no front court, it's definitely going to be an exciting season for the Sun Devils.
Yeah, it's a complete contrast from last year.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me behind the desk. Your first time? How'd it feel?
Great. Hopefully the first of many.
All right, well, thank you for joining me. Now over to Killian and Alex for a look at the women's basketball team.
Thanks, Alyanna. I've now got Alex with me here. Just want to talk a little bit about the season opened up this past weekend. They faced UTSA. How did the game go?
They looked really good to start off the game. Defensively throughout the entirety, they were forcing turnovers, getting their hands into passing lanes. They did a good job of contesting each shot. UTSA only shot 33% from the field. So they defended really well. Offensively, they also looked very good. The first quarter, maybe a little bit of jitters, but as the game progressed, they got better and better offensively. They were moving the ball very well, finding some open shots, feeding their bigs down low. Kiana Ibis had 16 points. Sharnea Chapman-Johnson had a very nice game. So just overall, just very good performance from ASU, very promising for a start.
Yeah, certainly it's nice to get that first win under your belts and you don't have to worry about it, ring the victory bell one time.
Exactly.
And so, looking here now, Courtney Ekmart, her first game since her transfer, how did she look?
Very good. She started off very slow. In the first half, she was only 1 for 6. She was kind of forcing some shots up, but in the second half, she really kind of calmed down. She shot 5 of 7 in the second half. She got 6 rebounds, had a couple of steals. So once she kind of settled herself down and played to her own strengths, she was extremely good. So it was very good to see, and she'll hopefully play like that going forward.
Yeah, certainly Ekmart, the transfer from UConn. If you're aware of the women's basketball world, you know they're an okay program.
They're decent. She only has 2 championships in 2 years there.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you seen her walking around practice with her rings on or anything?
No, I have not.
So we'll keep going forward now. Their next game up. Give us a little bit of preview for that. What do you think is going to happen?
Their next game is against Fresno State, so they're going to, and it's an away game, so that'll happen tomorrow night. Fresno State, they're coming off a season which they were 18-15. Decent start, decent season, but in a lower conference, didn't play as great competition. This should be a fairly simple win for ASU. Coach Charlie Turner-Thorne said after the game last time that it will be a difficult environment and a good test for them, and so it'll be nice if they come out like they finished their last game. They should be able to pick up a win.
Certainly, it's all about keeping up the momentum and keeping the season rolling, especially in the non-conference play, which does get difficult going forward. Some big games there. Well, thank you very much, Alex. We're going to throw it over to Alyanna, and she's with Trevor to talk about some volleyball.
Thanks, Killian. So, Trevor, the Sun Devils have continued to struggle this entire season, this time against the Oregon schools. What did you see from this Sun Devil team?
Well, you know, even though they went 0-2 on the weekend, I really felt like I saw the most growth that I've seen out of this team, and I think it has the ability to break kind of their mental breakdowns. You look at the game against Oregon on Friday, they had a lot of blown leads, including a 4-point lead in the second set and also a 3-point lead in the first set. And then when you look in their next game against Oregon State, they had a set where they were up 9 points. All of a sudden, the Beavers come back and tie that set, but they were able to close off that set. So I think that spoke a lot to them kind of embracing the challenges they were getting, as opposed to shying away from it and kind of being conservative in their hits and in their passes. They were really going after every point. So I was really impressed for them to do that. I think that's what you got to do because they have the skills. It's just the mental game where they were lacking, and I think they really overcame that. So
going off of that, you mentioned growth for this team. Do you think they're bringing themselves back into a position to win some games? I think they absolutely are, and I think that's like I said, it's the hardest thing to overcome is the mental area. They get up a lot and then they're kind of thinking, okay, we can close it off. They kind of take their foot off the gas pedal and then they let teams back in, and in the Pac-12 you can't do that. It's the best volleyball conference in America. So I think if they go forward, and especially with how they match up against some of these future teams, you look at Utah, only one hitter that they have to be concerned about. Colorado, they kind of beat themselves the last time they played them. So I think if they put together that same mental approach, swing hard at every point and go for every ball, I think they absolutely can put themselves in a position like they did against Saturday. So Saturday was senior night, big game for key players like Harker and Okaro. How important is this year's senior class to the future of this program? I think they found the perfect group of girls, especially going forward for the future of the program. Okaro's been an extremely amazing hitter for them, and she's moved from the opposite end of the floor to the middle to the outside. She's been so diverse. She's done everything the coaching staff has asked of her. And then you look at Hallie Harker, and if you want to see the epitome of hard work, you look at her, how she's going after every ball. She doesn't give up on any point. She'll dive into the stands if she has to. And I think just the verbal leadership and also out in the court, being there, kind of showing the younger girls what they have to model in order to bring success, because they also have a championship coaching staff. And that's kind of the embodiment that they want to be, is in those two players. So I think going forward, just kind of modeling those two players, what they've seen for them this season, is going to really help them as they try to establish a championship era going forward. Well, hopefully they can pull something out in these last couple of games. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you. So to keep up with how the Sun Devils end their volleyball season, be sure to visit us on devilsindetail.com. Now, since the winter season has reached everywhere but Arizona, the least we can do is talk about how the Sun Devils are doing on the ice. We go to Killian and Josh for more. Thanks. I've now got Josh with me. We're going to talk a little Sun Devil hockey. A little bit of an off week last week, but this week, team's back in action. Sun Devil hockey ready to go. They come back into town, and they've got Penn State. Penn State's struggling just a little bit. They've got Gila River Arena, Penn State's top 25 team, defending Big Ten champions. What should we look for to watch from this Nittany Lions team? Well, Penn State, they've had quite an interesting story. A few years ago, they weren't the big name that they are today in the sport of hockey. You know, last year, like you said, Big Ten champions. They ended up losing in the tournament to eventual champion Denver. But this year, they've kind of cooled off a little bit. They've had a couple of tough opponents early on in the season, including Michigan, including Notre Dame, and they've been struggling quite a bit, especially in terms of special teams. It seems like every time I come in here to talk with either you or Alyanna, we're talking about special teams, and it just continues to be a very important factor in games with Arizona State. And Arizona State struggling on special teams, Penn State struggling on special teams. The Nittany Lions only about 19% on special teams, but this is a very, very good team. They've struggled a little bit early on, but this is pretty much the same team that I think the Sun Devils saw last season. Last season,
the Sun Devils allowed 9 first-period goals in just 2 games against Penn State. The second game, they lost 8-0, and Penn State had 8 different goal scorers in that game. It's a very threatening team. They have goal scorers from top to bottom in their roster, and it's going to be a very tough weekend for the Sun Devils.
And certainly, special teams is a big, big key. So, as was mentioned, Penn State, they're in that little bit of a rough patch. Can ASU take advantage of that and possibly come away with a win or maybe even 2 in the series this weekend?
Certainly. I think, if anybody, this is Penn State's weekend to get their season back on track. But it seems like every weekend we've been saying that this is the time for ASU to get back on track. And I think this is a great opportunity for them to do just that, facing off with a top 25 team like the Penn State Nittany Lions. And if they can come back and get at least 1 win against a tough team like Penn State, they're going to be right back on track for the rest of the season. But for Sun Devil fans, you want to hope that they're going to be able to get a win, and then if they win the first game, you got to try to continue to carry that over into the second game, which is something they struggled with a lot this season. But personally, I think if Arizona State drops the first game, they're going to come out fired up for that second game against the Nittany Lions. And it's on the big stage at Gila River Arena, so you'd like to think they're going to get a pretty big crowd. And, you know, if they can show up in the spotlight, maybe some heads will start to turn towards the desert.
Certainly. So one more, a little kind of a 2-for-1 question here quickly. Do you think that the break that the Devils had this last week, do you think that that's going to help them out and factor into it? And do you think that they come away with a win this weekend? What are your predictions, I should say?
I think that these 2 weeks have been huge for the Sun Devils in preparing for this top 25 matchup against Penn State. I think they play solid hockey this weekend. I think they lose the first game by quite a large margin. I think the second game is a nail-biter towards the end, but I don't know if the Sun Devils escape this weekend with a victory.
Well, certainly. Thank you very much, Josh. Be sure to catch all of his stuff on devilsindetail.com.
Well, guys, that'll definitely be a much different environment from Oceanside.
Certainly, yeah. They got Gila River. It's going to be a big set of games this weekend for ASU hockey. Like you mentioned, it's going to be a little bit different than Oceanside. I can tell you that I am going to try and get my way over to Gila River. It is out all the way in Glendale.
I mean, I'm sure that they'll have plenty of room for you in the press box over there.
Hey, I hope so. I enjoy being in the press box. And you know what? Certainly, for ASU hockey, it's got to be good stuff.
Well, as always, for more from everyone you saw on the show here today, make sure to visit us at devilsindetail.com or follow us on Twitter at devils_detail. Thanks for joining us.